I'm going to expand on some of the tweets that I've written in the last week, and hopefully this will be helpful to you in the recruiting process. So, how to get a ridiculous amount of interest from college coaches. When I talk about ridiculous, I mean a lot of interest, 20 plus schools interested, because that is a different level of intentionality and volume than just trying to get a couple schools interested, right? And so if you're trying to get a crazy amount of interest, which some people are and some people aren't, but if you are, here are 5 ways to do that, okay? The first is 3xing, tripling the amount of video that you have. And so there's an easy way to do this overnight, and then there's a hard way to do this, which also makes a huge difference. And so the easy way to do this overnight is to take the 3-minute highlight video that you have and cut it into individual clips. Because if you have 3 minutes of video and you cut that up, there's probably 20 clips inside a 3-minute video, something like that, right? And so instantly you go from having 1 video to having 20, right? That's a 20x. That's not even a 3x. That's the way to do it overnight. Now, you have 20 clips. How do we turn 20 into 60? And that is, you need a longer period of time because you have to go collect more video. And so that's going to take a second. You're not going to be able to do that overnight. But if you can have a longer view of the process and you're not trying to say, how can I get, a ton of interest tomorrow, but you're saying, hey, I want to get a ridiculous amount of interest over the next 3 to 6 months. Now that becomes entirely possible. And so getting, 60 videos instead of 20. We have some clients who have up to 200 videos, right? And so that is a huge hack, especially if you're trying to get a crazy amount of interest in college recruiting. The second thing is emailing a minimum of 100 schools. And to be honest, if you're trying to get a ridiculous amount of schools interested, like at 20 plus, you're going to need to send more than 100, like almost certainly. It's just not going to be enough. Now, if you just want, 2 to 8 schools interested, maybe 10, then emailing 100 could do it for you. It just depends on your talent level, depends on the schools that you're emailing. But if you're trying to get a crazy amount of interest, you're going to need more than 100 schools. And by far, the only way that you're really going to be able to do this and have quality at scale is to automate the process. If you're not automating the process of sending emails, you're not going to be able to get a ridiculous amount of interest. It's just going to be very hard to manually send hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails. Because even if your initial email, let's say you email 200 schools, right? That's a lot of schools. If you email 200, but you only send 1 email to each school, that's 200 emails. But you're still not getting the benefit of sending follow-ups to coaches who didn't respond. And so really, you want to send at least 3 emails to each school, which means you're not sending 200, you're sending 200 times 3. That's 600 emails. Manually sending 600 emails with quality at scale is pretty much impossible for the average family, the average parent, the average player. And so really, if you want to get a ridiculous amount of interest, you have to automate that process. The third thing, post at least once per week on social media. This is like bare minimum. It should take you 5 to 10 minutes maybe to post on social media because you're just taking video that you already have, adding a quick caption and posting it, right? So it shouldn't take you that long. And so once per week is like bare minimum. It'd be, if you're trying to get a crazy amount of interest, it's probably more like 2 or 3 times. Following up with coaches, if you really are trying to get a lot of not just interest, but offers. Follow-ups really come. Of course, you have follow-ups to schools that didn't respond to your email. That's one thing. And then you have follow-ups to schools that did. And following up with schools that did respond to your email is how you take interest and you turn it into offers. But if you want a lot of interest in the first place, you want to start talking to a lot of schools, you have to follow up to your initial email. And then finally, just strategically choosing showcases and camps. If you're randomly going to showcases and camps, you're just going to have a hard time getting interest in the process. All right. Is Perfect Game worth it? Yes, if you're already talking to schools ahead of the event. If you're not, you're just competing against hundreds of other players in a crowded environment. Showcases and camps are for evaluation, not exposure. Not all Perfect Game events are created equal. There are some events that are more exposure-driven, some that are more metric-driven, some that are more development-driven, right? So not all PG or PBR events or whatever it is for your sport are equal. But it's always worth noting that any showcase or camp or tournament is going to be more worth your time and money if you're already in communication with schools ahead of time before you go to those events, right? So when there are 100 kids there or way more than 100 kids, they have a short list of players that they're ready to watch, and hopefully your kid is on that list, right? And so you just don't want to be competing against all these other players when you don't have a competitive advantage. And so I think it's just, I've said it a billion times. I hope it's ingrained in your memory by now. Showcases and camps are for evaluation, not exposure. You don't want to use showcases and camps to get on college coaches' radars. You want to use showcases and camps for coaches to evaluate you, coaches who have already heard of you, seen you play, communicated with you. It's a very different purpose of those events. It's not how they're marketed and sold to you. They are sold to you. Recruiting events in general are sold to you as like, hey, get on college coaches' radars. But like, that's not actually the purpose of those showcases. That's not how college coaches are using those events. Okay, 5 questions you can ask a coach on a recruiting call. You should absolutely have questions prepared on a recruiting call for a college coach. Straight up. If you don't, it is a one-sided conversation where the college coach is just evaluating you. That puts you in a position of weakness. You also need to be evaluating the college coach. Like, it needs to come off to that coach that you are not just going to take any offer that comes your way, that you are trying to figure out, is this a school that I would actually enjoy being at? And that in turn is going to make you more valuable and more desirable. And so here are 5 questions that you can just steal, right? What's it like to play for the head coach? Very simple. Coach should be able to give you a really good, clear answer. And so that's a straight up question. Tell me about the city. What's it like, right? College town, suburban, urban city. What's it like? What is the city like? Because obviously that's going to be a big part of your college experience. Tell me more about the major at your school. If there's a specific major that your kid is interested in studying, business, agriculture, whatever it is, ask about that major. Now, the coach might not know about that specific program at your school. And if that's the case, they will say, hey, you know what? I don't have a ton of information on that major right now. Let me go ask my admissions department, and I'll get back to you on that. Totally cool. Best thing about your school, this is a really simple way to get the coach to sell to you. Hey, coach, what is the number one reason that I should consider coming to the University of North Carolina? And he's going to say, well, you know what? I think it's because of X, right? And now, just by asking this question, you are getting the coach to sell to you. You are now in the driver's seat. Beautiful. That's exactly what we want. And then finally, the easiest way to make a good impression with a college coach is to finish with this question. How can I make this process easier on you? And most of the time, they're going to say, hey, you know what? Just keep me updated on what's going on, right? They're not going to give you any hard homework to do, but it just shows them that you are thinking about how you want to intentionally build this relationship and also take some weight off of them, because college recruiting is very hard, not just for the player, but for coaches as well. 5 things you should never say to a college coach. It's my dream to play for your school. I hope I can play for you. I think I can be of value to you. Am I good enough? Am I recruitable? The whole gist of these, I'm not going to go through all of these because I think it's obvious why you shouldn't say things like this, but it's not about your dreams. Like, it's just not. It is about your ability to make college coaches' dreams come true. If you can make college coaches' dreams come true, I promise your dreams will also come true. Like, they just will by association. So these are 5 things that I think when you say any phrase like these, it doesn't just have to be these exactly. Any phrase like these, you are putting yourself in a position of weakness, and you're going to have a hard time generating interest from college coaches saying things like that. How to get noticed at showcases and tournaments. Start conversations with coaches before the event. That's it. That's literally the best thing you can do. It is. That's the best way to make the most of any of your showcases and camps. We already talked about that a little bit, so I'm not going to dive into that more. Showcases and camps will not solve your recruiting issues. You cannot replace strategy with money. I love this line, and this is what I'm going to talk about in a second. I love that line. I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to spend a bunch of money and hope this works out. Bad plan. You'll lose money and still fail. Learn how to navigate the process. Okay, you cannot replace strategy with money. Here's what that means. It means that a lot of parents don't know how to navigate college recruiting. They're like, I just know my kid wants to play college sports, and I think that they're good enough. Then they don't really know what the next step after that is. They don't really know what they're doing. Maybe that's you, right? So what instead they do is they say, listen, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to throw a bunch of money at the process and hope that it kind of works out. Like, I'm going to do what everyone else is doing and what everyone else has told us to do, and hopefully my kid is good enough. The thing is that you're just going to end up wasting a ton of time and money on this. right? And so we don't want to say, oh, I don't have strategy, so I'm just going to throw a bunch of money at it. No, get a strategy. Like, figure out how the process actually works. And if you don't know how it works, then find someone who does. But you need to actually rely on strategy and how you're going to be able to take the next step in the process over time to actually be able to generate consistent interest and offers for your kid, right? That bird is so loud, but I hope you can't hear that. But we need to rely on strategy, not money, because if you rely on money, you're going to run out of it quickly. It's going to be very expensive. And also, money aside, like just time-wise, it's going to be insane. Like trying to go to every showcase and camp and tournament, it's just going to be too much. And so instead, take either money and go get strategy or figure out a strategy or whatever it is, because that is what is going to ultimately get you the best results in the most efficient manner. Academics are critical to getting scholarships. Have bad grades, you're making a coach's life 10 times harder. Good grades, you allow for flexibility. They might be able to get you on some merit aid as well as athletic aid. Guess what? Way more likely to offer you because of that. 100% true, right? So if you have a kid who has really bad grades, they're not going to get any academic money, and it's going to be hard for admissions to get them into the school. You just make it so much harder for a coach to actually put his neck out there for you. It just, by nature, it's just so much harder. Whereas take a kid who has really, really good grades. Not only is admissions going to be thanking the coach for bringing that kid to them, which AKA is awesome, but also they might qualify for merit aid, in which case they might be able to save some of the athletic money for another player to make their team even better, right? It's kind of like in a professional contract when a player takes a smaller salary, right? Instead of, LeBron James or whatever, instead of making 50 million, they take 30 million so the team can then go take the other 20 million and go get another star so that the team is better. This is the same thing, right? So for instance, for me, I went to Mississippi State. They told me, they said, hey, we'll give you 100% baseball scholarship. But what we'd like to do is see if you qualify for any academic money, and then we'll cover whatever the academic money doesn't cover with the athletic scholarship. Because then what happens is if I qualify for academic money, then they save some of that athletic scholarship money. They can go give that to another player. And that's exactly what happened. So I qualified for 50% academic money. Great. They only had to give me a 50% athletic scholarship, which means they just saved that 50% for another player, right? So now they can go recruit better players and get better players into the program, so we're going to win. So they're way more likely to recruit me and give me that spot than someone who had really bad grades who's going to take the full scholarship and they have to stick their neck out to admissions, right? And so academics are like a huge thing in college recruiting. There's a big misconception where people are like, oh, any athlete can just get into schools because of their bad grades. Like, first of all, that's becoming less and less true. Like, schools are less willing to take bad students because the average GPA in the United States is significantly higher than it used to be. Go check those stats. They're kind of crazy. And so that's becoming less true. But also, sure, are there athletes where that happens? Of course that happens. But like, why would you close doors and opportunities for yourself when really just like do your homework and study for tests? And I know it's not that simple, and some people have learning disabilities and there's extenuating circumstances. But for the most part, like, just do the basics and the fundamentals of academics, and you're going to have way more doors open to you or your kid in the future. Why your 3-minute highlight video ain't it? Coaches won't watch 3 minutes of a player they don't know. You make it hard for coaches to evaluate you. You don't have any flexibility later in the process. Hard to prove you can perform all skills required. Not ideal. Okay, 3-minute highlight videos are totally fine to have. I just don't want them to be the only video that you have, which for most people, that's exactly what they're being told to do. There's a bunch of recruiting people who are like, take your best clips, throw them in a highlight video, send it to college coaches. Don't do that. Like, straight up, don't do that. First of all, coaches aren't going to watch 3 minutes of a player they don't know. Like, most players who are contacting college coaches are not good enough to play at those schools. So college coaches are going to be like, I'm not going to watch 3 minutes of a player when I don't know if they're even good enough. And most of these players aren't. But they might watch 15 seconds. So make your video 15 seconds, right? Like, there's ways around this. And then also making it hard for coaches to evaluate you. If you have a 3-minute highlight video and you don't showcase one of the skills that you need to showcase for your position until 2 minutes and 30 seconds, guess what? The coach has to skip around on the video to see if there's even another skill there. And there might not be. They don't know. So now they're wasting time trying to recruit you. You're just making it way harder on them. And realistically, right, said this golden rule, you've probably seen me talk about it or tweet about it a ton. The easier it is for a college coach to recruit you, the more likely they are to. So if you want more interest, make it really easy for coaches to evaluate you. Making a 3-minute highlight video is easy for you. It's harder for the coach. Don't do that. You don't have any flexibility later in the process. As you're following up with coaches, one of the easiest ways to follow up with coaches is to send more video. If you only have one 3-minute highlight video, you can't do that. What are you going to do? Send the same video over and over and over again? Like, probably not, right? But if you break that video up into smaller clips, now you have lots of follow-ups that you can send. Gives you flexibility. Have to prove you can perform all skills required. Sort of like I was talking about with 3 minutes. 2 minutes and 30 seconds in, you showcase a different skill. Listen, you have to showcase all the skills that a coach needs to recruit you. If you can do that, you will remove the doubt that a coach has, that you are the perfect player for their team, that your kid is, right? And so you want to showcase all of those different skills. It's very hard to do that in a highlight video because it's like, all right, you're going to stack each skill on top of each other, or one of those skills is not going to get shown until later in the video. Like, that's so much harder. If we can segment all those different skills out, make it really easy for coaches to see all of them, now, coaches have like a buffet of skills, and they can just go click the ones and watch the ones that they want to most see, right? Makes it so much easier for coaches to recruit you. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Hope this has been helpful for you, and I'll leave some links in the description for resources if you want to take the next step. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time.